parliamentarians, I think that issues that we debate in this place are often framed as life and death, but no issue that we have discussed has ever come so truly close to verging on life and death as the one that is in front of us today, that medical assistance in dying, or MAID, specifically elective MAID for the sole purpose of mental illness. And it's not the first time that we've discussed MAID or MAID for mental illness, not the first time, at least in this House, and I have a feeling that it probably won't be the last. That's because this government, I think, has treated MAID not as a sober, rational conversation it deserves to be, but or as a collaborative, understanding discussion, but rather as a political football, a hatchet job that I think highlights their deep commitment to breaking consensus in this country on an issue that they have so sorely misjudged. As a result of that carelessness, or whatever else it may be, we find ourselves here again in a debate for a proposal that should have been done away a long time ago. Rather than attempt to discuss this legislation with nuance and care, we have what we have today. And we know that we can't simplify an issue as fundamental as the state's ability to allow the taking of a life. We know that there is much more to be considered. So in the process, they have replaced medical doctors with spin doctors, expert recommendations with partisan ideology, and reason with dogmatism. We have heard from those on the front line, including 80% of Ontario psychiatrists who are opposed to this expansion. 7 out of 10 provincial health ministers, plus all 3 territorial health ministers, support the indefinite pause on the expansion of MAID. And we have heard from advocates, those directly impacted by MAID for mental illness, who agree that this proposal minimizes the value of their lives and the inherent dignity possessed by every single human being. MAID for the sole purpose of mental illness speaks to this government's lack of respect for that dignity. And it speaks to their missing belief in the ability of those facing difficulties and their ability to actually get better. Worse, it speaks to a perverse ideology void of ethical guardrails, which is so far from consensus that has so long been unbroken by the understanding that a role exists for government to exhaust all avenues to help people. It is now prevalent to, rather than propose treatment and therapy to help those in tough circumstances, to propose state-sanctioned death. We have a duty as leaders, as parliamentarians, to safeguard the lives of Canadians, to give them a helping hand, to help them recover, to help them get better. We believe in overcoming adversity, in seeking help in a system that works for those who badly need it. We believe that it is possible, and the reason that we believe that it is possible is because that it is possible. And the success of early intervention, treatment, support has helped countless Canadians live fulsome, productive, meaningful lives. That is not just my philosophy as a parliamentarian. It is the core to what I think our national identity is. The alternative is what I describe as an entirely nihilist state, uninterested in the preservation of its own people. Our country was formed by people who came from all over the world to seek, through hope and hard work and sacrifices, a better life. Our lives have been revolutionized by the brave Canadians who never gave up, and for a country who never gave up on them. And our story is defined by confronting whatever difficult obstacles might lie ahead and not being intimidated by surmounting them. It's not just a discussion about this legislation. It is a fundamental debate about who we are as Canadians and who we want to be and the powers that we have as a parliament. I want to be clear. I do not want to minimize or deny the intense, personal, lived experiences that many Canadians have with mental health. Many in this House, many who are close to people in this House, and I know that it is a deeply personal one for anyone who has been faced with that challenge. But I do want to put on record that those suffering, their lives are not any less worthy of help of support or of love. And I think that's what this eventual plan says, even with a pause. You see, expansion activists have tried to reassure Canadians that MAID is not suicide. It would be distinguishable from suicide. That's what they say. And yet, when expanded to those who are seeking death for the sole purpose of mental health, evidence points to MAID becoming indistinguishable from suicide. So, despite the ideological pursuit of what I call this government's nihilism and the inability for it to manage its own legislation, they will not be able to escape the very real legacy that they have ushered in. A legacy that will become more apparent as Canadians will see more headlines of assisted suicide being offered to those in the Canadian Forces or to marginalized Canadians seeking an escape from suffering or poverty. Simply put, you can get better. Recovery is possible. Whereas outcomes might be foregone in physical health, there is no clear evidence that says someone can't overcome the struggles with mental health. And that alone should be enough. I can't stress enough that we have no way of knowing that it is not possible to get better. Our methods aren't advanced enough. The research says so. Only 47% of predictions about final outcomes are correct. So when a doctor diagnoses a lifelong mental illness, there's only a 47% chance that he will be or she will be correct. That's like flipping a coin, only the odds are worse. So are we really willing to put something substantial, so substantial, down to a game of chance? It's difficult. This difficulty is compounded by the very fact that it's impossible for a doctor to see mental health in a way that they can see other things like terminal cancer. It doesn't show up in a scan or in a test. While it's not the subject here, I have to ask, how fair is it to put a doctor in a position where they can't make a decision with 100% evidence, or that the evidence before them accounts from either the patient or the patient's family are not what they appear to be? How can someone have the peace of mind that the best outcome has been decided? We cannot let ideology blind us from the red flags that we are confronting at every step in this process. In the absence of certainty, it is fundamentally wrong for the state to do what I amount to playing games with human lives. And while I support the pause, not because it's well argued or well planned or even well considered, it's because it's necessary, I do not actually think that it's enough. A pause, more consultation, more studies means little if we refuse to listen to the facts and the insights that they bring. And no amount of additional testimony will change the fact that there's been significant doubts raised about the morality and the ethics of implementing MAID for mental illness. We cannot unhear those words that were spoken in committee. We can't unread the words that we've seen plastered in the newspapers. And we cannot ignore the accounts of those who are rightfully more than just skeptical. I want those who side with this government to think about what this proposal, not pause, but what the proposal actually means for the most vulnerable. And it's unconscionable for me, and I can't understand the different perspective when mental health is the only condition that would allow someone to seek an end, a government-sanctioned end to their lives. There is only one pause worth doing. There is only one pause that is safe. There is only one pause that protects innocent and the truly ill and the most vulnerable, and that is a forever pause. And I think anything less than that is a complete failure of this place.